We've all seen those parody movies that are just some of the worst films ever made. You know, epic movie or disaster movie or any number of these films that a lot of people say just kill the parody genre. A genre you could argue started with Mel Brooks and Jim Abrams and the Zucker brothers. But where did the downfall start? What was the magic movie that began this incredible decline to just some of the worst comedies ever made? Some people say it was Scary Movie, others say maybe High School High, but in my opinion, it's Spy Hard. A movie clearly trying to borrow from the Naked Gun formula, even using the same star, but did not know how to handle this material or really understand why this was all supposed to be funny. The story, like most of these parody films, doesn't matter, but let's go through it anyway. It's about a super spy named WD-40. Alright, that's pretty good. Who's of course played by Leslie Nielsen, trying to stop a supervillain from destroying the world, General Rancor, played by Andy Griffith. Isn't that a unique choice? He thinks he destroyed him years ago, but he comes back in one piece, or several pieces. Yeah, that's one of many jokes that isn't that funny. He's teamed up with Agent 314 to not only stop him from destroying the world, but also save another kidnapped agent. So this film was directed by the same guy who directed a lot of those, I don't know how many people can remember this, but Leslie Nielsen VHS movies you would see at rental stores. The ones that you go, I don't know, maybe the kids will like it, I might get a laugh here or there, but I'm not expecting much. Well, that's fine for a low-budget VHS release, but for a big-budget theatrical release, especially for the amount of celebrity cameos that are in it, you're expecting a lot more. It's very apparent what's wrong with the humor right at the beginning. Literally, the first few jokes just aren't landing, but you feel like they should. Like Leslie Nielsen is in a helicopter and he opens this briefcase and the papers just fly everywhere. Okay, I guess that's cute, but Mr. T is flying the copter. Why? Referencing the A-Team, maybe? I don't know, he's not in it long enough to get many jokes. He jumps out of the helicopter and then he's just immediately seen drinking some brandy, which, okay, you have to have him just hanging there for a bit while the music's playing like he's trying to look cool and then he brings up the brandy. You can't just cut to him with that. It's even followed by an okay joke where he just drops the bottle and it hits a jogger. That's not bad, but because the lead-in joke wasn't that great, it kind of distracts from it. Then he smokes a cigar. Okay, I guess that's supposed to be a topper from the last joke that wasn't that funny. And then he throws the cigar and it hits the parachute, it catches on fire. Okay, that could be funny, but then he just lands like there's no problem. Like, all these jokes are so confused. What made movies like Airplane and Young Frankenstein and all these other films classics is that it almost feels like it's one of those films. It takes the time to really kind of create this environment that you recognize as appreciating in the other movies they're satirizing, but they'll throw in a joke that kind of mocks the tropes while also kind of giving a loving homage to it. There's not really a feeling of understanding the material it's satirizing in this as much as just throwing in a bunch of jokes about it. The editing in this movie, I feel like, is what kills a lot of the jokes. Like I said, no scene can just feel like it can be a movie. It just has to be a joke. Oh, that's done. I'll go to the next joke. That's done. Go to the next joke. The problem with that, though, is imagine seeing a stand-up comedian who does nothing but tell one-liners. And he does it in a different style every single time. He doesn't really tell stories. He just tells, like, knock-knock jokes or something like that. That's not going to create much of an identity. And the funny thing is, both with the stand-up and this type of movie, you can do it in a trollish way. Kind of like Steve Martin's early material, both with stand-up and with movies. Like, it's almost a satire of satire, like it's a comedy of comedy, but the film both doesn't mix it up enough or stay consistent enough. It really doesn't feel like the humor has that much direction outside of just tell some jokes that connect to spy films. Remember in Top Gun where Charlie Sheen tries to win over the girlfriend and a romantic song starts to play and then they start to play all the romantic scenes we saw earlier in the movie and then they start adding other romantic scenes from other movies? It's just them in their place, like the end of Rocky or Gone with the Wind and stuff like that. That's satirizing a romantic trope with other romantic tropes, doing a parody of Top Gun, but then in a strange way, other movies very cleverly. It helps the joke. Here, Leslie Nielsen's just a nun out of nowhere. Like, okay, he's in disguise to get away from the bad guys, but then he just starts conducting the nun choir like Sister Act, and that's it. That's the joke. That doesn't help the humor at all. It's not saying anything clever. It's just acknowledging something exists. And there's so many moments like that. I also feel like they didn't really know how to use Leslie Nielsen. The Zucker brothers knew that he had to play it deadpan. He was always praised for that. The jokes worked because he looked so serious and he was so into it. They did the same with Charlie Sheen and a bunch of other actors. They knew that was the secret. Here, they just kind of want him to look silly and overreact and do big, wide-eyed stuff and goofy, cartoony antics. And again, I just don't think they realized how this style of humor was supposed to work. Now, I won't lie, there are a few moments that get some good laughs. I really like the opening with Weird Al Yankovic doing a parody of the James Bond songs. I like when a supposed old friend surprises him and he says, "Oh, we go back a long way, don't we?" And then it cuts to him being surprised again. Like, that's kind of funny. Maybe every 10 minutes there'd be a good laugh like that. Like, something that's just silly to be silly. In some respect, I do appreciate when a comedy like this does experiment with just some really goofy ideas. But I feel like all these classic satires have to be saying something about what they're satirizing. And yeah, okay, it doesn't have to be deep, it doesn't have to be a big commentary on the film or society or anything like that, but it needs to have an attitude on the material. It needs to have a take on the material. It needs to have some kind of opinion, whether it's love, hate, or both, or some sort of interesting thought about the stuff. And I just don't get any of that here. It seems like they'll cut to random movie moments and random celebrities just because they can, and they're recognizable. And how can you not say all these other terrible movie parodies that came after it weren't doing? Now, with that said, I don't think a lot of these bad parody movies looked at this and said, "Hey, let's try to replicate that, that was great." That's probably more where something like Scary Movie comes in. That's what these movies were trying to emulate. They're even called movie at the end of each one. But I think this is when people started to see, yeah, there is a wrong way to do this. And okay, I'm not gonna act like this is the first bad parody to come out. There have been others, but this is the one that so directly took a formula that clearly worked with the same actor and did not understand how to make it work again. It's like if AI wrote a parody movie. It has a lot of the same visuals and elements, but none of the real ideas. Is it the worst of these parody films I've seen? I guess not, but in my opinion, it was definitely the beginning of the end for this genre.